A dying signal Captain Jake Miller floated in the cold darkness of space, his small rescue pod drifting toward what looked like a dead ship. The massive vessel hung silent against the stars, its hull scarred by years of battle and neglect. Jake had been responding to a weak distress signal for 3 days now, pushing his little pod to its limits. The signal had been strange from the start. It wasn't like the normal emergency calls he usually answered. This one felt different, older somehow. The words came in broken pieces, speaking of the last hope and sleeping guardians. Most rescue teams would have ignored it, thinking it was just space junk sending false signals. But Jake had learned to trust his gut, and something about this call made him keep going. As he got closer to the big ship, Jake could see it was huge, maybe 10 times bigger than any vessel he'd ever seen. The metal was dark and worn, covered in symbols he didn't recognize. Parts of it looked human-made, but other sections seemed to be built by someone else entirely. It was like 2 different ships had been welded together. "This is Captain Miller calling unknown vessel," Jake spoke into his radio. "I'm responding to your distress signal. Can anyone hear me?" Only silence came back. Jake's scanner showed the ship had power, but just barely. Life support was running on emergency levels. If anyone was alive in there, they wouldn't last much. Longer. Jake brought his pod close to what looked like an airlock. The docking process was tricky. The ship's systems were so old they barely worked with his modern equipment. After 20 minutes of careful maneuvering, he heard the click of a successful seal. The airlock opened with a hiss of stale air. Jake stepped inside, his boots clanging on metal floors that had seen better days. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls, and everything smelled of recycled air and old electronics. The corridor stretched ahead of him, lined with doors that were sealed tight. Jake followed the main path, his flashlight cutting through the dim space. The ship felt empty, but not dead. It was more like it was sleeping, waiting for something to wake it up. As he walked deeper into the ship, Jake started to notice things that made him pause. The walls had writing in 2 different languages. One looked like English, but older somehow. The other was completely alien, with curves and lines that hurt to look at for too long. Pictures on the walls showed humans and strange creatures working together, building something important. Jake's scanner started beeping faster as he moved forward. The life signs were getting stronger, but they were coming from everywhere. Once, it was like the whole ship was alive somehow. Then he found the first door that wasn't sealed. It slid open when he approached, revealing a room full of sleeping pods. Dozens of them, all glowing softly with blue light. Jake's heart raced as he realized what he was looking at. These weren't just any sleeping pods. They were stasis chambers, and they were all occupied. Moving closer to the nearest pod, Jake wiped away the frost on its window. Inside was a woman, maybe 30 years old, sleeping peacefully. Her clothes were strange. They looked military, but not like any uniform he knew. Next to her pod was a plaque with writing in both languages. The English part was hard to read, but Jake could make out some words. Guardian Protocol. Earth's Children. Final mission. Jake's hands shook as he checked more pods. Humans, all of them, but also something else. In the far corner of the room were pods that held creatures he'd never seen before. They were tall and thin, with blue skin, and 4 arms. But they weren't prisoners. The plaques by their pods called them allies and friends. As Jake stood there trying to understand what he'd found, the ship's lights suddenly got brighter. Somewhere deep in the vessel, engines started to hum. The floor vibrated under his feet as systems that had been sleeping for who knows how long began to wake up. A voice spoke from speakers in the ceiling, clear and calm. "Welcome, rescuer. You have found us at last. I am the ship's mind, and I have been waiting for someone like you. These are not just refugees you have discovered. They are the last guardians of Earth's greatest secret. And now that you are here, it is time for them to wake up. Jake stepped back as the first stasis pod began to open with a soft hiss. The woman inside stirred, her eyes fluttering open to look at him. But instead of confusion, her gaze held recognition, as if she had been expecting him. "You came," she whispered, her voice hoarse from long sleep. "That means it's time?" Asterisk, the woman in the stasis pod sat up slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. Jake offered his hand to help her, but she waved him away gently. Her eyes were sharp and alert, not like someone who had just woken from a long sleep. "How long?" she asked, looking at Jake with curiosity rather than fear. "I don't know," Jake admitted. "I just found this ship an hour ago. I'm Captain Jake Miller. I was responding to a distress signal." The woman nodded and stood up, stretching muscles that should have been weak from disuse. "I'm Commander Lisa Stone, and that signal means the time has come." She looked around the room at the other pods, which were now beginning to hum with activity. "Ship, begin General Awakening Protocol." "Confirmed, Commander," the ship's voice replied. "All pods are responding normally. Estimated time to full consciousness, 30 minutes. Jake watched in amazement as more pods began to open. Men and women emerged, all wearing the same strange uniforms, all moving with the same purposeful calm. None of them seemed surprised to see him there. "I don't understand," Jake said. "What is this place? Who are you people?" Lisa walked to a wall panel and pressed several buttons. The room's lights grew brighter, and screens came to life showing star charts and data streams. "This is the Ark ship Horizon. We are the last survivors of Earth's Guardian program." "Guardian program?" Jake's mind raced. "I've never heard of any Guardian program." "That was the point," Lisa said. "Tell me, Captain Miller, what year is it by Earth's calendar?" Jake told her the date, and Lisa's expression grew grim. 237 years, she whispered. "We've been asleep for 237 years. More people were awake now, moving through the room with practiced efficiency. They didn't seem confused or lost. They acted like they had a job to do. Jake noticed that about half of them were heading toward the pods that held the blue-skinned aliens. "Those creatures," Jake said, pointing toward the alien pods. "Are they prisoners?" Lisa laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Prisoners? No, Captain. Those are the Veltar. They're our partners. Without them, none of this would be possible." One of the alien pods opened, and a tall figure stepped out. The creature was indeed blue-skinned and had 4 arms, but its face was kind and intelligent. It looked at Jake with large golden eyes and spoke in perfect English. "Greetings, human. I am called Swift Current. You must be the one who found us." Jake's jaw dropped. "You speak English?" "We learned your language long ago," Swift Current replied, "when our peoples first made contact before the war. Before the Great Hiding." "War?" Jake asked, but Lisa was already moving toward a central control station. "Ship, give me a status report on Earth," she commanded. The air in the room suddenly filled with a holographic display. Jake gasped as he saw his home planet spinning slowly before them. But something was wrong. The continents were different, and much of the surface was covered in strange geometric patterns. "Scanning complete," the ship announced. "Earth shows signs of major terraforming. Architecture patterns suggest Veltar influence. Human population, approximately 2 billion. Veltar population, approximately 500 million. Both species appear to be living in integrated communities." Lisa smiled for the first time since waking up. It worked. The plan actually worked. "What plan?" Jake demanded. "What's going on here?" Lisa turned to him, and Jake saw tears in her eyes. Captain Miller, what do you know about the Veltar? About first contact? Nothing, Jake said. I've never heard of them. As far as I know, humans are alone in the galaxy. That's because the last thing we did before going into stasis was erase all records of our existence, Lisa explained. We couldn't risk anyone finding us before the time was right. Swift current approached them, moving with fluid grace. The war between our peoples lasted 50 years. Millions died on both sides. But a small group of humans and Veltar realized that fighting would only lead to extinction for both races. So we made a plan, Lisa continued, a secret plan. We would take the best of both species and hide them away while the war burned itself out. Then, when enough time had passed, we would return to rebuild. Jake looked around the room at the humans and Veltar working together, preparing equipment and checking systems. You're not refugees. You're colonists. We're gardeners, Lisa corrected. Earth was poisoned by war and hatred. We've been sleeping, waiting for it to heal. And now that you've found us, it's time to plant new seeds. The ship's voice interrupted them. Commander Stone, we have a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures approaching. Earth, unknown vessel configuration. Estimated arrival, 72 hours. Lisa's face went pale. Show me. The holographic display changed, showing space around Earth. Dark shapes were moving toward the planet, ships unlike anything Jake had ever seen. They found us, Swift Current whispered. The Devourers have found us. The command center of the Ark ship Horizon buzzed with activity as more Guardians woke up and took their positions. Jake stood beside Lisa and Swift Current, watching the dark shapes on the holographic display grow larger and more detailed. Devourers? Jake asked. What are Devourers? Lisa's fingers flew over the control panel, bringing up files that were older than Jake's grandfather. They're the reason we went into hiding. The real reason for the war between humans and Veltar. The display showed images that made Jake's stomach turn. Massive ships, black as space itself, with strange organic curves that looked more grown than built. Around them floated smaller vessels, all heading toward Earth with deadly purpose. 300 years ago, Swift Current explained, our peoples first met among the stars. It should have been a time of wonder and learning. Instead, it became a time of fear and violence. The Veltar had been running from the Devourers for generations, Lisa added. Their whole worlds were consumed, their people scattered. When they reached human space, they were desperate and afraid. Jake watched the display as more information appeared. Battle reports, casualty lists, entire planets marked as lost. The scope of destruction was beyond anything he could imagine. Humans thought the Veltar were invaders, Lisa continued. The Veltar thought humans were working with the Devourers. Both sides were wrong, but by the time we figured that out, half the galaxy was burning. A new voice joined the conversation. Jake turned to see an older man approaching them, his uniform bearing more decorations than anyone else's. His face was weathered, but kind, with eyes that had seen too much. Commander Stone is being modest, the man said. I'm Admiral Tom Cross, and I was there when we first discovered the truth. Admiral, Lisa said with respect. I didn't know you were awake. Just came online, Cross replied. And I see we have a visitor. He looked at Jake with curiosity. You're the one who found us, aren't you? The one who answered our call? Jake nodded, still trying to process everything he was learning. I'm a rescue captain. I thought I was saving a ship in distress. You were? Cross said with a slight smile. Just not the kind of distress you expected. He gestured to the display. What you've actually done is wake up Earth's last line of defense. But Earth looks fine, Jake protested. I saw the scan. People are living there, humans and Veltar together. The war ended. The war ended because we made it end, Cross explained. My team discovered that the Devourers were using both species as a weapon against each other. They would arrive at a system, seed it with mistrust and fear, then wait for the inhabitants to destroy themselves. Swift Current's four arms moved in what Jake was beginning to recognize as a gesture of sadness. My people had been fighting the Devourers for so long, we forgot how to trust. When we met humans, we saw only another enemy. And we saw alien invaders, Lisa added. Perfect timing for the Devourers to move in and claim another dead system. Cross brought up a new display, showing a timeline of events. Once we understood what was happening, a small group of us came up with the Guardian Protocol. We would take the best of both species and hide them away while the Devourers thought they had won. The memory wipe was the hardest part, Lisa said. We had to erase all evidence of our existence, make it look like both species had simply given up and retreated to their home worlds. Jake studied the timeline, seeing how carefully everything had been planned. But that was over 200 years ago. Why didn't the Devourers just take Earth then? Because they're patient, Cross replied. They let their prey rebuild, let them think they're safe. Then, when the population grows large enough to be worth harvesting, they return. The ship's voice interrupted them again. Admiral Cross, updated scans show the Devourer fleet contains approximately 3,000 vessels of varying sizes. They will reach Earth orbit in 68 hours. Cross's expression grew grim. 3,000. That's larger than any fleet we faced during the war. What are we supposed to do? Jake asked. You have one ship against 3,000. We have more than one ship, Swift Current said. The Horizon was just one of 12 Guardian vessels. The others are scattered throughout the galaxy, waiting for our signal. Lisa was already working at her console. Ship, transmit awakening code to all Guardian vessels. Full spectrum, maximum power. Transmitting now, the ship replied. Estimated response time, 6 hours. Cross turned to Jake. Captain Miller, you've stumbled into something much bigger than a rescue mission. In 3 days, Earth will face the biggest threat in human history. The people down there don't know what's coming because they can't know. Their ancestors chose to forget the horror of the Devourers. But we remember, Lisa said quietly. We've been sleeping for 2 centuries, dreaming of this moment. A moment when we could finally fight back. Jake looked around the command center at the faces of the Guardians. They were scared. He could see that. But they were also determined. These people had given up their lives, their families, their entire existence to protect a world that didn't even know they existed. What do you need me to do? Jake asked. Cross smiled. First, we need you to contact Earth. Tell them Captain Jake Miller is requesting permission to land. Don't mention us. Don't mention the Devourers. Just say you're a rescue captain who found some interesting salvage. You want me to lie to them? We want you to prepare them, Swift Current said. Because ready or not, the war is about to begin again. Asterisk Jake's hands trembled as he activated his communication array. The voice that answered from Earth Control sounded bored and routine, nothing like someone who knew the galaxy's greatest threat was heading their way. This is Earth Control to unidentified vessel. State your business and prepare for inspection. Earth Control, this is Captain Jake Miller aboard the salvage ship Horizon. I'm requesting permission to land. I've recovered some unusual artifacts that need immediate attention from your xenarchaeology department. There was a pause. Xenarchaeology? Captain Miller, we haven't had active xeno studies in over 50 years. Most of that stuff is just old junk from the settlement wars. Lisa gestured for Jake to keep talking while she worked at her station. Around them, the Guardian crew was preparing systems that hadn't been used in centuries. I understand that, Jake said into the radio. But what I've found isn't junk. I've got intact technology, Maybe even some kind of eye system. It's unlike anything in the databases. Another pause, longer this time. Captain Miller, please transmit your identification codes and salvage documentation. We'll need to verify your claim. Cross appeared beside Jake, holding a datapad. Use these codes? He whispered. They're legitimate, but they'll also flag your transmission as priority. Jake read the codes into his communicator. Within minutes, the bored voice was replaced by someone who sounded much more interested. Captain Miller, this is Director Hall of the Earth Science Council. Your codes indicate you're working under Protocol 7 clearance. Can you confirm the nature of your find? Jake looked at Lisa, who nodded. Director Hall, I've recovered what appears to be a Guardian-class vessel with intact crew and AI systems. The occupants claim to be from a project called the Guardian Protocol. The silence that followed was so long that Jake thought the connection had been lost. When Director Hall spoke again, his voice was tight with stress. Captain Miller, maintain your current position. Do not, repeat, do not approach Earth until you receive further instructions. We're dispatching a priority team to your location. The communication ended, leaving Jake staring at the radio in confusion. What just happened? Protocol 7, Cross explained. It's a code that was supposed to be used only if the Guardian Protocol ever needed to be activated. It's been sitting in Earth's databases for over 200 years, waiting. Lisa looked up from her console. Jake, you need to understand something. The memory wipe wasn't complete. We couldn't erase everything without crippling Earth's defenses. A small group of people have always known about us, passing the knowledge down through generations. A secret organization? Jake asked. More like a backup plan, Cross said. They've been watching the skies, keeping the old technologies ready, just in case we ever came back. The ship's sensors suddenly lit up with activity. Swift Current moved to the navigation station, his forearms working with incredible speed. Admiral, he reported, I'm detecting multiple ships launching from Earth. 27 vessels of various classes, all heading in our direction. They're not coming to arrest us, Lisa said, watching the display. Look at those configurations. Those are military ships, but they're using hybrid technology. Human and Veltar designs working together. Jake studied the approaching ships. They were unlike anything he'd ever seen. Sleek human hulls with the organic curves of Veltar engineering. They've been preparing for this. For 2 centuries, Cross confirmed. Building ships, training crews, developing weapons. All based on the plans we left behind. The communication system crackled to life again. Horizon, this is Admiral Kim aboard the ESF Unity. Request permission to come alongside. Granted, Cross replied. It's good to hear your voice, Admiral. Admiral Cross? Sir, it's an honor. My great-grandmother served under you during the Guardian Project. She told me stories, but I never thought I'd actually meet you. Within an hour, the space around the horizon was filled with Earthships. Jake watched through the viewports as small shuttles moved between vessels, carrying people and equipment. The coordination was perfect, like they'd been practicing for this moment their entire lives. Director Hall turned out to be a woman in her 60s, with gray hair and sharp eyes. She came aboard with a team of scientists and military officers, all of whom looked at the Guardians with a mixture of awe and relief. Admiral Cross, she said, saluting. Director Sarah Hall, Guardian Council. We've been waiting for you. Guardian Council? Jake asked. The descendants of the original Guardian Project, Hall explained. We've kept the knowledge alive, kept the preparations going. When your Protocol 7 signal went out, it activated sleeper cells across the galaxy. Cross smiled. How many ships do we have? The Earth Defense Fleet currently has 237 vessels ready for combat, Hall replied. Plus whatever the other Guardian ships bring when they arrive. And the other Guardian ships? Hall's expression grew serious. We've received responses from 8 of the 12 Guardian vessels. They're all heading here, but some are coming from very far away. We might not have them all before the Devourers arrive. Jake looked at the tactical display, showing the approaching enemy fleet. Is it enough? 8 Guardian ships and 200 Earth vessels against 3,000 Devourers? It has to be, Swift Current said quietly. Because this time, we're not just defending Earth. We're defending the idea that different species can work together instead of destroying each other. Cross nodded. The Devourers feed on hatred and fear. But look around you, Captain Miller. Humans and Veltar working side by side, building something beautiful together. That's what they can't understand, and that's what makes us stronger than they are. Asterisk, the space around Earth had become a fortress in just 48 hours. Jake stood on the bridge of the horizon, watching as hundreds of ships moved into defensive positions. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying, a mixture of human engineering and Veltar artistry, all working together for one purpose. Guardian Fleet Tango is reporting ready status, Lisa announced from her station. That's all 8 Guardian ships now in position. Admiral Cross studied the tactical display with grim satisfaction. 8 Guardian ships, 237 Earth defense vessels, and about 50 civilian ships that refused to evacuate, against 3,000 Devourers. The odds aren't good, Director Hall said from beside him, but they're better than they were 300 years ago. Jake had spent the last 2 days learning about the Devourers, and what he'd learned made his blood run cold. These weren't just conquerors. They were something far worse. They fed on the life force of entire civilizations, leaving behind empty worlds and broken dreams. Contact from the Devourer fleet, Swift Current reported. They're requesting communication. Cross straightened his uniform. On screen, the holographic display filled with an image that made Jake step backwards. The creature speaking was humanoid, but wrong in every way that mattered. Its skin was pale gray, its eyes were black holes, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like dying stars. So, the Devourer said, the little gardeners have finally awakened. We wondered when you would crawl out of your hiding places. We're not hiding anymore, Cross replied calmly. This is Admiral Cross of the Guardian Fleet. You're not welcome in this system. The Devourer's laugh was like breaking glass. You think your little alliance can stop us? We have harvested 1,000 worlds while you slept. We have grown strong on the fear and hatred you tried so hard to prevent. Then you don't understand what we've built here, Lisa said, stepping forward. This isn't about fear or hatred anymore. This is about hope. Hope? The Devourer's expression changed, showing something that might have been confusion. Hope is just delayed despair. We will show you. The transmission ended, and immediately the Devourer fleet began to move. 3,000 ships, each one a weapon of destruction, heading toward Earth with terrible purpose. All ships, battle stations, Cross ordered. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for the future of cooperation between all species. The battle began at the edge of the solar system. The Guardian ships were the first to engage, their weapons firing beams of pure energy that lit up the darkness. The Earth Defense Fleet followed, their hybrid weapons proving surprisingly effective against Devourer shields. Jake watched in amazement as human and Veltar crews worked together perfectly, anticipating each other's moves and covering each other's weaknesses. It was like watching a dance, beautiful and deadly at the same time. They're breaking through the outer perimeter, Swift Current reported. Approximately 500 Devourer ships are heading for Earth. Let them come, Cross said. Phase 2, all ships. What happened next was something Jake would never forget. The Earth Defense Fleet suddenly changed formation, the ships moving in patterns that seemed random, but clearly weren't. The Veltar ships dove and weaved between the human vessels, creating a web of crossfire that caught the Devourers completely off guard. But the most amazing thing was what happened on Earth itself. The planet's surface began to glow with thousands of points of light, defense stations that had been hidden for centuries, all coming online at once. The combined firepower of the planet and the fleet created a barrier that the Devourers couldn't penetrate. "Impossible," came a transmission from the Devourer leader. "You cannot have this much unity. Species always turn on each other. Always." "Not anymore," Jake said, speaking into the communicator. "I've seen what humans and Veltar can build together. You're wrong about us." The battle raged for hours. Ships were lost on both sides, brave crews giving their lives to protect their homes. But gradually, the Devourers began to retreat. They had expected fear and division, but found only determination and cooperation. "This is not over," the Devourer leader transmitted as his fleet pulled back. "We will return with greater numbers." "We'll be ready," Cross replied. "And next time, we won't be alone." As the Devourer fleet disappeared into deep space, Jake looked around the bridge at the faces of his new friends. Humans and Veltar, working together, protecting each other. It was what the galaxy could become if more species learned to trust instead of fear. "So what happens now?" Jake asked. Lisa smiled. "Now we get back to work. The Guardians have awakened. Earth is safe, and we have a galaxy full of worlds that need to learn what we've learned. That cooperation is stronger than conquest, Swift." Current added, "That hope is more powerful than fear." Cross nodded. "Captain Miller, you thought you were saving a ship. Instead, you helped save the future." Jake looked out at the stars, no longer dark and empty, but full of possibility. The Guardians were awake, the sanctuary was safe, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Asterisk.